On today's episode of Wangel's Workshop, I'm going to be making a hidden tang clip point knife with a slight recurve. This is only the third hidden tang knife I've made, so this is definitely like a bit of practice still, and it's going to be made out of 1084 high carbon steel. I'll rough out the shape of the knife using an angle grinder, and then I'll head over to the 2x72 to dial in the profile. Now I'm going to use a magnetic handle to surface grind the knife. You want to make sure when you do it like this to rotate the knife around the platen because the belts aren't worn evenly, so this ensures that you get an even finish. Then I'll turn my 2x72 grinder horizontal and I will grind all the lines parallel to the length of the blade. This makes it easier to mark out my layout lines. Using some blue layout fluid, I will coat both edges of the knife, and then I'll use a drill bit to mark out my main bevel and my false bevel. Now that I have my bevel apexes marked out, I can start grinding the bevels. I'll start with an aggressive angle, and I will grind straight to that center line that I had marked out using a drill bit. After that, I will back off the angle and just slowly work it towards the spine of the knife. In this instance, I'm using a work rest to grind the bevels. So the hand that's holding the knife will rest the knife on the work rest and then just pull it across the belt. The free hand, I'll be using my thumb to apply the pressure into the belt at the center of the belt. Depending on where I apply the pressure with my thumb is whether or not I'm going to grind towards the apex of the blade or whether I'm going to bring it towards the spine of the knife. Doing the false bevels on a belt sander can be kind of tricky, so I kind of rough them out and then I'll draw file them after the fact to flatten them back out. So here are the results so far. There was one thing I forgot to record, and that was thinning the tang out. This can actually be quite difficult if you don't have a file guide, but it's super important for getting a proper guard fit up. For the handle material, I'll be using some ironwood and some African blackwood. And then for the guard, I'll be using more 1084 steel. I will coat the guard in layout fluid and then mark a center line and then center punch where I am going to drill the holes for the tang. Since I don't have a mill, to connect the holes that I drilled, I'll actually put the drill bit in a regular drill and turn the guard vertical, and then I'll put the drill bit through the holes and apply the pressure downwards until they slowly connect. Then I'll use a file to finish fitting up the slot for the tang. Since the fit up in the handle material doesn't have to be as perfect as the fit up of the guard, I'm going to use a drill bit that's slightly thicker than the blade itself, and this will make fitting these up a bit easier and quicker. Now I'm going to drill through the handle material and the tang to create the pinhole, and after that pinhole is drilled, I will be able to heat treat the knife. Now I'm going to try to create a Hamon on the blade using some refractory cement that I had left over after I put my forge together. I'm not really going all in on this Hamon and trying the best I can. I'm really just kind of trying to do this quickly and experiment to see what we get. For the heat treat, I will essentially be bringing the blade up to non-magnetic, trying to bathe it at that temperature for about 5 to 10 minutes, and then quench it in oil warm to about 120-130 degrees. Once the blade is quenched, I'll check it with a file to make sure that it's hardened, and then I will put it in the oven at about 395 degrees to temper for 2 2-hour cycles. And this is the blade after the quench. Now it's time to go back to the 2x72 and clean it up. Now I clean the blade up from about 120 grit all the way up to 400 grit, and then I use 3 levels of surface conditioning belts to get the knife where it is right now. If I truly wanted to pull the Hamon out, I would have to hand sand the knife to about 1,000 grit. Right here I'm trying to go ahead and etch the knife. The initial thing didn't drop the knife low enough in the acid, so I had to redo it with a clamp. While the knife is etching, I'm going to go ahead and grind the guard down closer to its final shape, just because when you go to grind it, once it's all glued together with the handle, it tends to heat up quite a bit, and I don't want to melt the epoxy. So here are the results from the Hamon. If you're unsure of what's going on here, the refractory cement that I apply to the spine of the knife is heat resistant. So essentially when I quench the blade, it's only going to quench the edge. And then when you acid etch it, it's going to show that contrast between the part of the blade that's hardened and the part of the blade that's not. Now using some acetone, I'm going to clean up all the different parts of the knife, and then using some West Systems G-Flex epoxy, I will glue it all together. I'm not sure if I mentioned it, but I also added a black G10 liner that will go between the two handle materials. And so here we are after the glue up. At this point, it's essentially time to shape the handle and then sharpen the knife. For the handle, I will initially start off by grinding out the rough profile, and then I will use the 2-inch wheel at the top of the grinder to create the Coke bottle shape that I'm looking for. Now I'm going to use a file to finish shaping the handle, and then I will hand sand the handle from 150 grit up through 600 grit. For the finish on the handle, I will simply buff it with a white buffing compound. Now the last thing to do is just sharpen the knife. I will start on a 2x72 grinder with an 80 grit belt. I will create an even secondary bevel all the way across the edge, and I will do that on both sides until I create an even burr across the entire edge. Once I've created an even burr across the entire edge with the 80 grit, I'll move up to 120, 320, and 400 grit. I would actually go further, but I don't have belts higher than that. After that, I'll continue on to a honing rod, which will mostly remove the burr, and then I will finish on a leather strop. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking it and subscribing to the channel. And if you want to be notified when I upload new videos, hit that notification bell. As always, thanks for watching.